Mike Anderson here, Reno Fly Shop. We're doing another tying tutorial. Today we have the Squirmy Hybrid. This is actually a carp fly. So it is August right now as I am tying this. And the Truckee River is getting pretty warm unless you're fishing early morning. By around 11 noon, the water's getting up to about 70 degrees, getting a little bit too warm. Luckily for us, that is a perfect time to switch gears a little bit and fish for warmer water species. And carp just happen to be a really amazing, fun fish to go after. And this is one of my favorite flies that we sell at the shop and we use and will be available online for those tying kits that we have. So we are going to start out with a Firehole 315. Okay, in a size 10. Okay. We're going to use 140 denier thread in black. Now this is a pretty thick thread because the squirmy material can be a little temperamental to work with. So I really want to make sure that every now and then I give this thread a, I guess that'd be a counterclockwise spin, and that will tighten up, braid the thread, and allow us to not put just a ton of material down. So I'm going to start my thread. I'm going to give myself roughly 2 eyes lengths back as I'm wrapping, okay? And that's where I'm going to tie in some medium dumbbell eyes. This is B-chain actually, medium B-chain eyes. Give that thread a good twist again, really cord it up. So the key to tying these in is using a nice Xing pattern. So I'm crossing over the top, coming below, coming over and atop. So if I twist it this way, this is what it looks like. Okay, so as you're tying these in, they're going to rotate a little bit on you. Not a problem, just make sure by the time you're doing your big pressures that they are lined up just right. And then another little trick to lock these in is to go over the shank of the eye, under the chain, over the shank, under the chain, over the shank, under the chain. You do this after you've cross-wrapped a few times just to really lock those in. Finish with a couple of turns. And then we're going to put a little bit of super glue, but we're going to go under the fly and put it on the other side. Now the reason I do that, squirmy material, the Castor Squirmito is what we're using from Hairline, does not react very well to any kind of super glue or any pretty abrasive glue like that. So I want to put it on the underside where the material is not going to contact it. So now I spin my thread the other way, and that's going to flatten out my thread. So again, like I said, the squirmy material is a little hard to work with. I'm going to give you a few tips really quick. The first one is you want to place the squirmito material a little bit on your side of the hook. And I'm going to do 1 or 2 really loose wraps, okay? Almost no pressure at all. 1 or 2 super loose wraps, and I'm pulling and pushing that fiber towards me. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of a pull, and I'm going to pull that squirmy material towards me, okay? And as I'm wrapping down and adding more and more pressure, I keep pulling towards me and down the hook. This material really likes to turn on you. So we're going to come down about 2/3 of the way, and you can see when I release it, it's pretty much right on top, just what we want. And then I'm going to come back up, some really good pressure, a little extra bump there. We're just going to kind of put some thread wraps. We're going to cover that up anyway. Okay, so if the squirmy material kind of hangs to one side, that's fine. As long as it's mostly on top of the shank there, we are golden. So the next material we're going to use is just Ice Dub in Peacock, which is a nice green color. And we want to build up a pretty good body, so I'm going to make a pretty good noodle. And then we're going to taper the fly kind of a little different than you might expect. Since we're not focusing for trout, we're trying to imitate little invertebrates, crawfish or damselflies, stuff like that. So we're actually going to have kind of a reverse hourglass shape. It's going to be skinny, taper up to the eyes, and then taper back down through the hook there. I like a pretty ratty noodle with this. I don't want all those fibers to be all nicely caught up and pretty. I want a little bit of room there. And I'm just going to dub on my way up, and then here I'm going to build a little bit of bulk, and I don't want to squeeze it right up into those dumbbell eyes, okay? I want to leave a little bit of room for that partridge to be able to flare. Perfect, just like that. Okay? So we're going to use a Hungarian partridge feather in olive. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to peel away all the fluff. We don't want any of that. And then I'm going to grab it right at the tip, pull back, and that's going to expose these little fibers kind of pulling back. And then this is going to be my little, this is going to be my little tie-in tag, okay? So I would just stroke those fibers back, and that's where I'm going to tie it in. Now I have to be very particular about how I tie it in. The feather does have a curve to it, okay? I want to make sure that curve sits on the fly when I tie it in and not upwards when I tie it in. Go ahead and spin that thread, really tighten it up, really braid it up. The stems on these can be a little fragile. We're going to tie it in right on top with some big wraps. 1, 2, 3 behind. Lift up and do another 3 in front. It usually creates a really strong pinch point there. And then we are going to cut off the excess. So this next part, you want to have a good pair of hackle pliers. We're going to grab the hackle and the plier, and we're going to palmer this around the fly. I usually like to go around once, maybe once and a half. You definitely do not want to overdress this fly with too much hackle. That hackle is going to breathe. It's going to cause some nice movement, but I don't want it to kind of choke the fly by having a little too much. So I pull back, really try and train those feathers back. Come down. So there's one. We're looking pretty well covered here. So I'm probably going to do 1.5, so now you can see my fly is oriented upside down. That's a tragedy. Try that again. Okay, once I'm here, I'm going to bring the thread up to capture it. You can see I'm kind of pulling towards the eye of the hook to help capture those fibers. We're going to trim it off nicely. Then anything that doesn't want to go backwards, we're just going to pull back. Kind of lock it in place. A little more peacock dubbing. So we're going to do a little collar. We're going to cover the wraps of thread on that eye there, so we don't need a ton. But I also want to have just enough that we kind of trap down a little bit of these fibers here, kind of force them back a little bit. So a couple wraps right here, and you can see that really sucks all of those fibers back. We figure eight the eyes a couple of times, and then finish right there. Give that thread a spin again. Give it a good whip. And then I like to put a little glue right where I whip finished. So this is the way that the fly is going to sit in the water. It's going to orient hook up with the eyes there down. This squirmy material will kind of flutter and float in the water just a bit. It's not going to be super buoyant, but it's going to cause a lot of movement. Now when you're presenting this fly, one thing you want to be aware of you only want to cast to feeding carp, okay? A carp that's shallow and sunning himself, or a carp that is cruising through, probably isn't looking to eat and is going to be spookier the next time you go and try and fish for them. So typically what I like to do, I like to see a fish nose down, tail up, shooting mud out of its gills, and I want to drop this fly right in front of his head. Pretend he has a baseball cap on. You want to get it right in front of that baseball cap. That's his field of vision when he's feeding. Let it descend right in front of his face. Keep your eye on the fish. Watch them twitch. That's them sucking it in. And then a super strong trout set. Carp are super fun, great fight. It is like bone fishing, but not in tropical areas. So go ahead and tie this up. We have these kits available at renoflyshop.com and at the Reno Fly Shop. Go out there and have some fun.